All right, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Kevin Keene. I'm co-chair with Nadi and the Higher Education TIG. We're excited to have you all here, along with our other TIG leadership. So today we're going to just be providing kind of an overview of what we know about Evaluation 2026 as of today. And also as the second part of the session, when we get towards the end, we want to do a little bit of brainstorming and opportunities for some collaboration and thinking about how we can work together to put together some possible proposals for Evaluation 2026. So I'm not an expert on this by any means. I'm just sharing the information that we have at this time. So if others, including TIG leadership, want to jump in with any other information as we talk, please feel free to. Also, if you haven't already, feel free to put your information in the chat so others can talk and collaborate. And also feel free to speak up throughout this session if you have any questions. Please be aware, though, we are recording this, so we'll be posting on our YouTube channel so for others who can't attend. But when we get towards the end and start talking about collaborating on some proposals, we'll stop the recording so we can discuss that more openly. So just kind of a general, we have some links we'll be putting in the chat that Daniel will be doing throughout this talk, so you can also access this information as well. But as you all probably aware, Evaluation 2026 is going to be November 16th through the 20th in Charlotte, North Carolina. Our theme is going to be evaluation across barriers. So they don't have a whole lot on the website at this point about the theme, but if you click on the website, it'll have kind of a general introduction. But basically, the theme they're looking about is how evaluators connect ideas, people, sectors, and perspectives to create stronger, more equitable, and more meaningful evaluations. So, really about how evaluators bring people together, organizations together, cultures together, with across geographic boundaries, organizations, and methodologies. So, it's also, the 40th year that they're celebrating for this conference as well. So it should be a good conference. So hopefully we will see you all there. I know some people weren't able to make Evaluation 2025, and some of you we connected with there. So hope you all were able to make it, but I'd encourage you to look at the website as they provide more information about the theme. But there is something interesting to know about the theme as we come up and look a little bit more about the sessions. So as you may or may not be aware, they have made some changes to the conference this year. They have posted this information on the Evaluation 2026 website. I'm going to share some information with you about this. Of course, like I said, the other members of our TIG leadership have been involved in these conversations, so I'll give them opportunity to share additional information if they'd like after I kind of talk through this in general. But one of the major redesigns is it's changing to a stream-based conference structure. So previously, we had a TIG-based conference structure, which meant that proposals were submitted to TIGs review. They were allotted so many slots, and they assigned proposals based upon those reviews, based upon the number of slots that were provided. Just due to the scale of the conference and some financial considerations, it was not really possible to continue to do this. If you think about the number of TIGs that we have, in addition, some of the feedback that they were getting from people who were attending the sessions is there was a lot of overlap, and I think it's because there wasn't a consolidated effort to review proposals. So a lot of proposals were very similar that were submitted to different TIGs. And the result was that there was a lot of overlap. So they revised this based upon a lot of feedback they had. So when you submit proposals this year, it would no longer be to a specific TIG, but rather it would be to a stream. And we'll look at those streams here on a future slide. Also, they're changing the form. They're updating it somewhat. I think it's kind of in process as far as launching, but I think you can see a copy of the form currently on the website. Also, they're having a centralized and coordinated review process. So what that means, like I said previously, TIGs will no longer be reviewing the proposals. There will be a central team that will review proposals. So they'll send out an AEA-wide call for reviewers, an opportunity to review those applications. It won't be on a per TIG basis. It'll be on a per stream basis. Also, some of that review criteria has changed. However, with these changes, and we're going to learn more about this next week. So AEA has a meeting, so I don't have all the details on this piece. But they're also still going to maintain some TIG-sponsored sessions. We don't know exactly what that's going to look like yet. We will know more next week, but more of that is to come. So in general, they're going to be based upon these streams, but there may be some opportunity for a TIG-sponsored session in the future. So before I move on, does anybody else have any questions about that, or anybody on the leadership team have anything they want to expand on that I shared? I don't see anything in the chat. Okay. All right. So kind of moving on to these streams. So, and more of the information about the streams are available on the Evaluation 2026 website. So When you submit your proposal, you'll have to identify one of these five streams, and they are all relatively broad from my perspective in reviewing them. So we have five different streams. We have foundations and core practices. So this is related to foundational knowledges, practices, and practices that are grounded in the evaluation profession. So as we look more about the proposal types, that'll probably help out in some of the criteria that they're using, but this is more about knowledge and practices. The second stream is about methodological learning and design choices that produce credible, useful evidence to support evaluation, learning, use, and influence. So we're looking more at design methods. And I would say for all of these, like while it may be specific to an individual evaluation, they're really looking for things more broad that can be applied across contexts. So you'll see that as one of the criteria they look at, but trying to focus these in one of these areas. Stream three is about equity, culture, and justice in evaluation. So it highlights sessions that foreground equity, cultural responsiveness, and justice across different contexts. Stream five is about innovation, complexity, systems, and futures. So it's focusing on evaluation in or of dynamic systems and or uncertain environments or contexts. The final one is stream five, which is about building professional community within and beyond AEA. So I think you'll find these are kind of broad streams, but as you're creating your proposals, it's important that you find the stream that fits and kind of tailor your proposal to that specific stream because that's how they'll be reviewed. And one of the criteria that we'll be looking at is how well your proposal fits within these streams. So I would encourage you, as you're putting together a proposal to closely look at these five different streams, and they have more expanded definitions on the website. But try to think even now as you're starting the planning stages, which will your particular proposal fit best with, and how can you tailor your proposal to fit these streams to help increase the likelihood of it being accepted. So some of the different things, and I kind of alluded to this in the previous slide. So what are they looking for with a good proposal submitted to the conference? And just once again to highlight, our TIG will no longer be reviewing these proposals. So any perspective that we're providing is based upon what's on the website and based upon our previous experience. But some things that they're looking at, they're looking for concrete, so things that can actually be applied, tools, method, insights, and approaches that can be applied across contexts. Just so like from context of us reviewing proposals before, sometimes we'd get a very specific proposal that's about a specific evaluation that was used. It's much, while that's okay to use as an example, but it's much more applicable if it's applied more broadly so that it can be used across different contexts. So I wouldn't just focus on a specific evaluation without that broader context and how it can be applied across context. Also, they want to ensure that it demonstrates methodological rigor, innovation, and thoughtful reflection on practice. So we want to make sure that it embodies those principles that we use in evaluation. Also, things that are innovative will probably apply more broadly, or things that may be able to help us engage in conversation about practice. Also translates lessons, evidence, or experience into actionable learning. So things that actually can be used by people who attend the conference also may contribute to meaningful dialogue, collaboration, and professional connections among the people in. And you'll see the different types of proposals. So this can be maybe a little bit more applicable to some more than others. Also, it's very important as they're reviewing the proposal, they're going to make sure that the purpose is very clearly stated, that it's applicable to the intended audience, and that there's actually a strategy to engage participants in the session. And as they select these proposals, they're going to look closely at the fit with the stream that you submit to. So it's very important, like we talked before, about looking at those streams and tailoring your proposal to it. Then also the session format that's going to be used. And we're about to go over the different types of formats as well. Any questions, comments?
First of all, I'd like to thank you, Kevin, for
Yes.
doing
Sorry.
this because I feel like I actually probably should have been the one preparing this, but he was previously the program chair and he's got this like wonderful presentation. So what you said so far and the updates on this is really great. So I appreciate all that.
Thank you. All right, so types of presentations. So there's a lot of it's the same as we've done before, but there's a couple subtle changes. So I will share those as we go through. But if you submit a proposal before, many of these are very, very similar to what we've done before. So expert lecture. So this is going to be a formal presentation, just a single individual who is an expert in the field with a presentation with some conceptual methodological innovation. So just thinking kind of broadly though, from past experience, there can only be so many of these. And even as a, previous program co-chair and we had to review proposals, you can only have so many presentations with one person to allow as many people to be engaged as possible. So I think you need to consider closely if your proposal would fit here, but that's what that proposal would be. We have demonstrations, which is a live or simulated walkthrough to show participants the use in applying evaluation concept, tools, methods, or analytical approaches. So demonstration, and you'll look down below, is a little different than a skill building workshop, whereas demonstration, you're actually going alongside and showing someone how you do something. And then the skill building workshop is actually a hands-on demonstration where the participant actually is able to participate. So those are both full sessions, but two different types of sessions you may submit to. Also, a multi-paper session, and I would say this is a place that maybe our TIG could collaborate well together, is where we have a moderated session of up to 3 papers on a related theme or topic. Each paper has 15 minutes, and there's a chair and a possible discussant to look at the proposal. So that might be a great place for us to collaborate together to put together a multi-paper session. A panel discussion is kind of like what we had for our last TIG chat, where a group of panelists with a level of expertise come together and share some information and have some time for question and answer. Skill building workshop I just talked about. A think take is kind of a more general session where somebody introduces a topic or question, and there's a more general, meaningful discussion about that topic or question. The next one is a change. It's actually just a change in a name. It used to be Birds of a Feather, but they've changed it to Roundtable Conversations. Maybe that's just to make it more people understand what it is. But it's the exact same thing as Birds of a Feather. Sometimes they'll be combined in the same area, but they're small, informal gathering. Main goal is to build networks to networking. They have some type of idea or question that people will talk about related to a topic. And this is probably the biggest change that I noted in reviewing kind of the proposal types. It's related to the posters or as individual papers. So in this case, they're no longer doing just individual papers or the Ignite session. So all those types of proposals will all be submitted as posters. So this would just be a poster presentation that you would do like one of the sessions you'd normally do about some type of project, methodological approach, or other topics of interest. And then they will still continue to have the pre-conference workshops or professional development workshops before afterwards. Any comments or questions about the proposal types?
Could you back up one slide again?
Yes.
So with the multi-paper sessions, we should, instead, because there's not a single one, we should put together a cluster of papers and a discussant and a chair and submit it all as one
Yes.
before.
Yes. Because
So I have a
previously that,
question
go
about
ahead.
that because in the past you put together the presentation proposal, the abstract you submitted was for a paper, and then they would group them together, right, Kevin? And so you don't necessarily find 3 people who have a common theme with your paper. But I don't know. Honestly, I don't know how this is going to work. But that's how they've done it in the past. And I suspect they're not going to change that.
So that's a good question because I know last time we were given the choice as a TIG. What we chose to do is to maximize the number of presenters was actually to take all of our single papers and offer them a multi-session. I don't know if they're going to have that allow them they will do that. So that's a good question when they actually release it. But from how I understood it on the website, that's where I thought that you'd probably be best off to create a multi-paper session and collaborate together. But maybe there are opportunities. AEA is going to be doing their own session. I believe it's on April 7th, where they'll give a chance for a Q&A. So that's a good time for us to ask that question and verify. But this is based upon what's presented currently on the website. Any other comments, questions?
Shannon had a comment. She asked, "Are poster presentations expected to fill out the entire application?" Have they released this? Have they released the proposals? And
So
Shannon, is that reference to last year or is it for this year?
I clicked on submission and it had everything from this year. And I
Oh,
tried it last week and it didn't work, but I did it yesterday and it did. And poster was one of the options. But then, like I said in my comment, a lot of the questions are about like, what are the outcomes that you expect participants to get? And what design are you going to do to engage participants and things that really don't seem to apply to posters. So I did send the AEA people an email, but didn't hear back. So I thought since there are people on the planning committee on here today, maybe they could answer. I didn't know if it was a mistake to have posters have to do the whole thing, or if you should just kind of try to fill it all out.
I can offer an opinion, but I can't offer an answer specifically. What I would say is there's an oversight on their part, because they're thinking about this from the perspective of most people want to have an in-person presentation and are not going to select the poster specifically. But I think that's an oversight on their part, 'cause you want to do a poster. So what frequently happens are people say that at the end there's a little link that says,
Yeah,
would you be open to doing a poster, which is
right.
the default if you don't get a presentation, so they can fill up the poster sessions. That's my
I do
thought.
feel like students tend to gravitate also to posters.
Mhm.
What I had to share this year really isn't a session and honestly doesn't fit into any of their categories. So yeah,
I,
that's kind of why.
I can't tell you how this would be reviewed because honestly, we don't know how the review process is going to go this year. But my opinion is in those areas where it says, how are you going to engage people? So you would say, I am specifically interested in presenting a poster. And if there's anything you want to talk about engaging people while you're standing in front of your poster, you could put that. But I think if you are clear on those boxes about how you're not, this isn't a default, this is what you're selecting. This isn't the second choice. This is the first, my first choice is to be a poster. So I think that
Yeah.
would go over. If I suspect I will be a reviewer, and that's how I would share it.
I was just having
How
a
I
hard time
review it
even
too.
knowing which
Yeah.
strand it would go in. But
So I believe on April 2nd, right, Kevin, they're having a meeting. So I'm glad you mentioned this, Shannon, because we'll try our best to raise it at that point and see if we can get you a more concrete answer to that.
thank you.
And I believe that that if I remember correctly, the way that you're going to engage participants may be a new question this year. And because I know that's one of the, I think that was one of the new ones. I could be wrong, and maybe that was just like Matt said, an oversight, not thinking through the poster piece of that. I don't know. So it's worth asking. But if it's a required field, I guess we have to complete it. And how Matt responded probably best.
Thanks.
So just to kind of moving to the next phase, and that's a perfect introduction to the next phase. So this is what you'll find on the site. And what I found this morning, and it may have been updated, Shannon may have looked at it more recently than me, is what they had is kind of their preliminary information about submitting a proposal, but they may have actually gone live at this point. So that's great. But this is what they provided, like the information that they will need. So they need the session title, session format. That's what we just went over, the presentation type, session stream, a session summary, just kind of an overview of what the session is. Participant outcomes. So these are like, we should know how to do these well, like measurable outcomes that we expect the participants to get from the session, and a list of authors and presenters for that particular proposal.
It
Some
was a
addition,
lot more than that. There were specific questions. Oh, I think that's what you have up here.
yeah,
Well,
that's what they had was going to prepare appear in the program, but then this was what additional information is needed for reviewers, and some of these may be related to. So contributions to evaluation, specific questions they want you to answer, session design, and participant experience. And I think that may be what you're referring to is like participant experience engagement.
mm-hmm.
Alignment with the conference theme. And one thing to note about this hasn't changed this year as well, is that this is actually now an optional field. So previously, alignment with the conference theme was one of the criteria you were evaluated on to whether you would be accepted. But based upon everything they've written out so far, this is actually, they recognize that sometimes that created overlap, too much overlap between sessions. So it's only required for the presidential strand. However, I would pay attention closely to the actual guidance provided by EA when they do their session, I believe on April 7th. So also they want to make, there's check boxes for the alignments with the AEA guiding principles and the AEA evaluator competencies. And also some of those check boxes that Matt mentioned previously. Would you be interested in using this proposed for AEA 365? Would be willing to be a poster presenter, and some of those other check boxes as well. But like I said earlier, when I checked it today, It wasn't quite live yet, but they may have like went live, and you may see some additional questions in there that were not posted on the summary page that was up earlier today. So a lot of this on the website is being updated in real time. I created the original presentation last week. It's been updated in the last few days. So it could be they may be working on it today, and there may be some additional information. So this is what it's actually April 9th. I keep saying April 7th. That's wrong. So AEA is actually holding a session where they're going to go over and give some tips. And I would encourage you all who are submitting, they will have more information than us. So like I shared previously, we are not reviewing proposals as a TIG, so we have less information than we normally would. We normally would coordinate it and actually eventually be closely involved with selecting those proposals, but AEA will be centralizing this process, and many of us will be serving as reviewers, but we're not actually overseeing it. So if you are interested in submitting, especially with this new format, this new process, I would encourage you to attend this session. We can put the link in the chat, but I would encourage you to sign up, attend, and get some tips directly from AEA on how to submit this proposal. And I think it's even more relevant this year due to the transition of it being more centralized and not being reviewed by TIG. So I think we have that link in the chat. Encourage you to register. If you aren't able to make it, maybe reach out to somebody who is able to make it, because that information will be really important. So a few other things just to kind of quickly go over before opening up to kind of our collaborating session is just highlight, what is our role as a TIG as we move forward to evaluation 2026. So we are no longer reviewing conference proposals. We may be giving us a TIG sponsored section. That is what Nadine referred to earlier, that we'll be learning more about on April 2nd. We will continue to have the TIG Fair. We'll be actively participating in the TIG Fair at Evaluation 2026. We'll also be having our business meeting. Last year, we had a dinner we all went to. We plan to continue to do that. But one of the questions we had for you all, and this may be a good time for us also to possibly stop the recording so people feel more free to talk, is just how can we better connect at Evaluation 2026 as we're planning ahead for the next few months, to help facilitate the community that we have in our higher education TIG. So Matt, do we want to stop the recording now so we can transition to that piece, I guess?
All right. So for anybody who's out there watching this, feel free to connect with us. You can find us through the AEA website if you have any more interest or questions or thoughts. A lot of you can find us. You've got our contact information because you received this. So feel free to respond to that email or see the contact information that's in the email, how you got this link to watch this video. So we'd be happy to connect with you. But with that, we'll see you guys later. If everybody else is live, stick around.